I'm sure the P-Funk family, and of course specifically George, was definitely saddened by Sly Stone's passing. And did they do recording towards the latter part of Sly's life? Were recordings
Oh,
still in the vault? A lot of stuff.
tons. I mean, no, a lot of it's out. Sly and George like best friends forever. And you can read about a lot of their escapades in both of their autobiographies. Um, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. But if you look at the sort of part of Sly's career when he resurfaced after that Grammys performance,
Yeah, yeah.
um, 2010 or whatever that was. Sly had been, even before that, Sly had been coming out, or maybe it was earlier than that. Sly had been coming out with us on the road with Parliament Funkadelic on a pretty regular basis. In 2008, 9, 10, those 3 years, and maybe even a little later. And he would come out, he'd do a little mini set in the set.
Okay.
Sometimes he'd have a keyboard and he would just come up with something new, like completely innovative. It would be like there's a riot going on, like in a new way happening right in front of all of us. Like it's just
Right.
so, with like the talk box and the little keyboard. And then some nights he would come out with his guitar and like we do I Want to Take You Higher and like thank you for letting me be myself and stuff. Like I'll never forget those times. There's a great recording on YouTube. I tell a lot of people. I don't know if we talked about it, but from the Chicago, I think it's the Chicago African Festival. It's something like that. But it's Sly with P Funk with us, doing those songs, and he's up front with the guitar, and it's
Okay.
just like everybody in the comments like, "There's no way that's Sly. It can't be," like, because he's just looking and acting in a way that you haven't seen him look or act since before he kind of disappeared, in the
Right.
80s, before that, and it's a really special performance. It's
I'm gonna look
oh
that up.
08,
Yeah.
oh
Okay.
07, maybe, or 708, because Gary Scheider is still alive as well, and he's in it too, and we're doing all those dance to the music, and it's just
Wow.
such a great little medley, and it's all just kind of on the spot too. Like it wasn't planned, wasn't
Mhm.
rehearsed, and it's really good. On the recording side, yeah, Sly did a lot of recording with George, especially the '08 to 18 period. So he's on Gangsters of Love, George's 2008 solo album. He figures kind of prominently. He's on a couple things on there. He's on Shake the Gate, Funkadelic's return album, 2014. He appears on 5 songs on that album, um, including one that's just me and him called Yellow Light. And it's
Mm.
all just my keyboards, his keyboards, and he's singing. And like he was always still innovating, because people ask me like, what were you guys like, what was the, I don't, it's Sly, like it's just like a lot of times it's like sounds and things you've just never heard before, and he's very much continued those same innovative strides he was making on things like Fresh and like Small Talk and stuff, but
Right.
like going in even further directions into the future, uh, with the keyboard technology he was using and with the sounds he was playing with, and he was just influenced by everything, and influenced everyone, and it was an honor working with him the little bit that I did. But yeah, there's actually quite a big output of Sly stuff with P Funk in that early 2010s, mid 2010s period, and you can find it on those later P Funk albums. That's like one of the really cool things about those albums is Sly's uh his input. Like he did one song on that Shake the Gate, If I Didn't Love You. I mean,
Mhm.
that song's that's genius. Like that, I don't know how else to put it, but just genius. That's one of my favorite Sly songs ever. And he cut that 10 years ago, you know what I mean? Or so, like it's not even from his, famous period or whatever. The guy was writing genius stuff all the way up until the very end.
So
So
he just
um,
never wanted to get back into the rock star mode to go out and tour and do stuff.
yeah, you
Yeah,
know,
just never
I
happened.
you could a book could be written about the the period where he kind of went into um, the more like hibernation mode, if you will, or that kind of thing. There was a lot of stuff about missing gigs. I used to live when I lived in New England. I used to live next door to the guy who owned the Omni in Atlanta. He
Oh,
was the
okay.
owner back when it was like the Omni in the 70s, and um, he told a story about he found out and I was real young. He was like, "Oh, you like Sly Stones? Oh, I love Sly Stone." He's like, Sly missed the gig and whatever, something about at the Omni in like 1972. But how that was kind of a likely story for Sly at that time, where he was missing a lot of the gigs. And even when he was in P Funk, when he came back with P Funk during my period, in my tenure, um, I remember when he came over with us to Japan, came all the
Mhm.
way to Japan for the Tokyo Jazz Festival, and he didn't do the gig. He came with us. We went all the way to Japan. He didn't actually perform. So
Right, right.
things like that were still happening all the way into, and I think a lot of that is the cult of personality, the
Mhm.
person that you're made to be versus the person you are, and all the pressure that's put on you. It's one thing when you're a sideman like myself, quote unquote, or a band member, but when it's all on you, George is one of these people who has like the perfect kind of personality for this life,
Mhm.
because his personality hasn't really changed throughout all the periods. Like things have changed, aspects have changed, modes have changed, but he's sort of that same pretty approachable guy that has had the same kind of, I don't want to say carefree attitude, because that takes away from his professionalism. It takes away from his workhorse. He's such a workhorse, but semi carefree attitude, seemingly carefree attitude when it comes to the cult of personality and dealing with said cult of personality in the limelight and all the things that go with that. I think Sly is more like most of us in that it can be difficult. I know that Bootsy talked about that being tough. I know that everybody from Prince, everybody's had their demons, fighting demons. George
Right.
Clinton's one of those he's kind of impervious. George got thick skin. He's just kind of impervious to that kind of thing for some
Yeah.
reason. Being
Some bumps,
Dr.
but then he
Funkenstein
beats it.
didn't
Yeah.
trip him out.
Yeah.
The ego thing. He never got tripped out by ego. Everybody has an ego, and he's a great band leader like James Brown. So of course it comes with the territory. But he never let that stuff get to him the way I feel like it got to a lot of the Michael Jacksons and all the other great. But he also maintained a certain level of undergroundness even when the band was skyrocketing at their highest point, which is 1978. There was still the joke, which one is George Clinton? I think
Mhm.
that some of that was engineered, on purpose. Um, maybe some of it was it was like self protection, you know, self preservation in a way. And that's just conjecture, but
Right.
he's definitely managed to have a very seemingly easy hold of his cult of personality and being able to manage and maintain it without all kinds of damage from the outside or from the inside, which I think is commendable.